So, friends, today let's figure out why the position of the body changes. And it becomes such that ordinary everyday movements, they start to cause pain. They become hard to do, and you don't really want to move anymore because after practically normal things like walking, sitting, raising hands, some pain, discomfort appears. This is related to the fact that if we just stand, do nothing, there should be a certain muscle tone. Ideally, it should be distributed evenly across all muscles. And when we start to make some movements, all this should adjust to our movement. And if we take a few points, the first one will be our head, then the chest, the pelvis, and the foot. That is, these parts, ideally, should be on the same line. A certain part of the foot, a certain part of the pelvis, the chest, and the head, they should form such a line, and a certain balance should be there. We take the front-back direction. There is also a kind of deviation in the lateral flatness, and these places should correspond to each other from this point of view as well. But let's figure out exactly how the position changes in the front and in the back and why it becomes difficult to stand or sit. Very many people have such a desire. They want someone to stretch their spine. That is, they feel that it is under the influence of some incomprehensible force. I guess gravity. Apparently, it is constantly subjected to such a load. Something squeezes it. They want to stretch it. So they straighten their spine. They go to different procedures like stretching or hanging. They love it, but they don't really get better. This feeling of the crushed spine doesn't go away. So what pushes them down? Maybe their head? The weight of the head is not so big to cause some pressure from top to bottom and on the spine. But the position of the head is affected. That is, if the head is in line with the spine, at least approximately, then it more or less withstands the load. But if the head is displaced forward, here, that is, if the head starts to be in front of the pelvis and the foot, especially in front of the foot, if it goes beyond the line of the foot, there's an increased load on the spine, and those muscles are constantly working to get it back into a position where they're comfortable holding it. But it stays in this position. And the question is, why does it stay in this position? Now, we're not interested in this right now. We'll probably figure it out later. Now, let's see what happens next. It's impossible to be in this position. That is, if his head popped out in front, he would have to adjust to this position. And the first thing that happens is that the position of the pelvis changes because the head ended up in front, beyond the support, beyond the limits of the foot. Here is the foot. This is the place you rely on. Here the foot ends. This is where your support ends. The larger the size of your shoes, the easier it will apparently be for you to stand. The smaller it is, the harder it is. Well, in short, the differences are not big either. If the position of your head goes beyond the limits of support, here, like this, then all the muscles that are located at the back, on your legs, on your spine, they start to sort of pull you back here. But if they can't do it, then the pelvis sort of adjusts itself under the position of the head, and it shifts forward here. Thus, the head can, you see, also move back here. That is, it no longer goes beyond the limits of the foot so much, and it ends up here in line with pelvis. So the head was forward, the pelvis was back. The pelvis was in a more or less normal position, but the head shifted forward. The pelvis changed its position. It's now a little ahead of the foot, but the head ended up over the pelvis. That is, the head was forward, now the pelvis is forward. The head moved back a bit, but the pelvis changed its position. That is, the head is now forward, and the pelvis as well. That is, this is one of the common positions at the very beginning. The position of the head changes, then the pelvis adjusts to it. And in this position, you can live normally. Nothing in particular may even hurt. Here, the iliocostalis muscle will be strained under load. There will be tension in the muscles of the back of the thigh. That is, there will be a problem. If a person is engaged in some kind of sport, there will be a problem with stretching, because these muscles will constantly strain. But in general, you can live like this. There may not even be any particular pains because the position of the pelvis compensates for the position of the head and the load on the legs and the lower back. Sometimes the lower back can hurt, but if the abdominal muscles here are well, they, in general, withstand such a load and everything can be okay. There may be difficulties with some exercises, with some movements, but in general, you can live. Well, sometimes the lower back will hurt, legs, headaches will sometimes occur because all this is overloaded. But not so often. All problems begin when a person sees their imperfect position. This position. So he thinks he's slouching. And he decides that he needs to do exercises to straighten his back. And that's okay, but he decides that he needs to maintain a nice posture. That is, he needs to... So he is in this position now, right? Everything is more or less normal for him. Nothing is strained. Everything else is adjusted to his head. He can live. But suddenly he decides that he needs to maintain his posture. And he starts to straighten his spine like this, without changing the position of his pelvis. His pelvis being is here. But everything is quite harmonious here. His pelvis is here, and he starts to shift his chest forward due to the bend here. He starts to bend here. These muscles start to be used between the shoulder blades try to connect, and he manages to do this. This is his shifted pelvis forward, which compensates for the position of the head, which was also forward. That is, his head was here, right? Let's mark it. This is where his head was first shifted. Only his head was like this. Here's the head. It has shifted, but it was only his head. So that's how mark it here. But now his pelvis is also protrudes forward. Now he's moving his head, chest, and pelvis forward. Everything is now ahead. Ahead in relation to what? Relative to his feet. Everything is shifting. That is, relative to the foot, the head shifted first, and the pelvis adjusted under it, and now the chest too, and here. All the problems start here. Everything will start to cause him pain. All the muscles will strain. All the joints will be overloaded. All the joints are overloaded. Arthritis of the joints appears. Now the whole body changed its position. Everything looks even, right? Our person tries to hold the posture, constantly strains these muscles. All of them are constantly under tension. Everything hurts. Nothing helps. He tries to stand up in this position when everything will be in one line for him. The chest, the pelvis, the legs, everything will line up. Not my best drawing. Adding some bends here. But look, his leg is behind. His support stayed back just like that. Yep. So you see, these stages, they need to be corrected in a certain order. Under no circumstances can you just take it and try to hold the posture. Like many people think, just straightening your back, joining the shoulder blades, it will just make it worse. Everything strains. The stomach begins to bulge right here. It starts to protrude even more. And that's besides protruding rib cage, pelvis, head. Now we got a belly too. At this point, there's an odd turn that changes direction. It's below this bend. Well, in short, from this position, it's very difficult to turn back. It's possible, but it requires more time. The most important thing in all of this is to understand why the head ended up here. If you remove the head from this position, and no, it's not that there are weak neck flexors. It's a body position that is comfortable for a person to take. That's why he takes it. If you change this body position, the position of the head, then everything that follows will not happen. The most important thing is to understand what to do with the head, how to make it so that it returns to its place again. What do you think? How do we do this? Write in the comments if you have any ideas. I mean, I know, but maybe you do too? Write down what you think. Maybe someone will write something interesting. How to return it back. This is the first thing I want you to write. And secondly, what do you think? What's the weight of the head? Try to weigh your own head? Try it. If you have scales at home, put your head on it. Lie on the scales and ask your comrade to see the number. You won't see it yourself, right? Put your head down and ask how much it weighs. Maybe someone has 5 kilograms, someone has 2, someone has 1 kilogram. We'll find out. I'm waiting for your comments. The first and second question. Write how much your head weighs and why it tilts forward, and we'll see if the weight of the head depends on the correct answers you'll give or not.